This is Angela Zender, and this is yet again another live Tuesday Connections webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. What I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to start a webinar to be live on Facebook for the people who aren't able to join us on Zoom right now. We're just going to share it on Facebook because last week we had about half of our people watching on Zoom and the other half was watching on Facebook. We want to be able to reach as many people as we can because we feel that this message is important and we want people to be able to hear it. So in just a minute or two, Dr. Ray and Jean will be on. And the topic for tonight is concerning anxiety. So yes, that is a quite a broad topic, I would say. You know, one thing you could think about is in what ways does your anxiety manifest? Also answer the question of, do you have anxiety or not? Was there a certain time in your life when you were more anxious? Are there people around you who identify as being anxious or not? And what does anxiety mean? Right? So we're going to talk about it, talk about, our own thoughts and experiences with anxiety, but also what the research says and what certain theorists and books say about anxiety, right? And also it varies among cultures and societies, right? So just think right now about how your family thought of anxiety and where you might have learned it from. Hello, Dr. Ray and Jean.
Hi,
Hello, Angela. How are you?
I'm doing lovely, thank you. At the moment, we are just loading as we're going live on Facebook.
Okay, that sounds good. We're just testing cameras, angles, and everything too.
Okay, so I think that's perfect. So I did set up everyone so far with what the topic will be tonight. It's concerning anxiety. And I know that I'll be a big part of this. I'm just going to take a couple more minutes away from the screen to make sure we get the Facebook Live running, and then I'll come back and jump in. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay.
So today we want to talk about anxiety. What's your statistics that you got on that?
It is the most common mental illness in the United States. 40 million Americans suffering from anxiety.
You know, the interesting thing about anxiety is it affects us not just emotionally, it affects us physically, and it affects our thinking, and it's all wrapped together. And so we are able to be this biofeedback system and really rev ourselves up. And then we get kind of stuck in that fight, flight, or freeze. And it actually feels more uncomfortable to release it, to let it go. It's a really difficult thing to try to balance. I think in our experience, the people medicated for anxiety are the least compliant.
So anxiety specifically is something that we need, right? We have worry, we have fear, we have sadness, we have all of those emotions for a reason. And anxiety is just one of them. It serves a function. You know, as species on this planet develop, they all start with the emotion of fear. And then as human beings, we have evolved to have a multitude of emotions, anxiety and worry being one of them.
Anxiety is like, pay attention, something's not right.
It helps us prepare for something in the future. It helps us prepare for any type of threats that might be in our environment. And so, you know, when our brain starts searching for threats in the environment, it doesn't have a dimmer switch. It's just on or off. And so it's just constantly going to be, you know, searching and searching until it finds a threat. And then once that threat is neutralized or it goes away, then it continues to search. It searches for other threats. And so it doesn't really turn off unless we actively turn it off. And so it's not surprising that it is the most common mental illness that Americans suffer from,
right?
Anxiety disorders, right? And there's a multitude of them, and we're not going to get into all of the different ones, but, you know, it's not a surprise because we are just bombarded by so much stimuli we're bombarded by media, we're bombarded by, all these types of threats, that our brain can't distinguish between a tiger jumping out of the bushes or you just got a bill from the IRS.
Right. And so when you're dealing with anxiety, there is so many coping skills that you can use, and all of them work some of the time, and some of the time none of them work. And that's a really hard part about anxiety, because we all have it. We all experience it at some level, and it hijacks us like very quickly when we go through it. I remember sometimes we're public speaking and I'll just be la 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 la, and then
you just forget, just blank out, right?
And it's funny to watch your mind just go, gone, just gone.
Right.
It's so funny. And I don't know if you've ever had anything really anxiety producing, like public speaking or, maybe a sporting event or something that you're in. And it's so hard to control it. And actually, it's much worse when you're thinking about it and right before you're about to do it. And once you do it, once you're in the middle of whatever that behavior event is, you don't notice it. But all that adrenaline rush, I think, helps you perform better. So in some ways it's beneficial.
It can. It can until or unless that like throttle gets stuck open. And so if it gets stuck open and you're not able to calm yourself down and start that parasympathetic nervous system response and just calm and relax yourself, then you'll just start jumping from one thing to the other to find yourself even more ramped up and even more anxious. And that's typically how a panic attack starts, right? Is that it starts with the thinking, and then your body takes over the physiological responses that, your body starts pumping the adrenaline, as you're talking about, heart rate, accelerates, respiration accelerates, blood pressure increases. And so with that biofeedback system, your body giving your brain that signal that you are having this type of a response, it increases that response.
It's interesting to listen to you talk, because people are different and we're all sort of on this bell-shaped curve, and we can respond to anxiety in several different ways, right? Some people get really agitated and talk really fast and rev themselves up, but some people do the opposite. Some people go into hide or freeze mode.
Right.
And I'm more of the freeze mode. You're more of the ramper upper mode. And so it's a little bit different. So in the middle of something that is very anxiety producing, I will look very calm. And even almost like I don't care, but it's just a different way that I learn to respond to things. And maybe there is some of that that's a little hardwired, that we have a temperament like that, maybe even at birth. It's always interesting when you have more than one kid and you see, even right from the beginning, some babies sleep, some babies don't, some eat regularly, some don't, some are easier to soothe, some are not. And that's all part of that system. And so I think that's why everyone has to learn themselves.
Yes.
What works for them, what doesn't work for them.
And not just kind of run to a quick fix, meaning run for medication, right? And I'm not saying that medication isn't necessary. It absolutely is, but I think that too often what we do is we try to just get rid of what we're feeling instead of trying to understand why we're feeling it and where it's coming from.
I think that's an important thing to talk about, because that's not the function of medication. Yep. Medication's job is not to stop you from feeling. It can take the edge off, but for some people, they need medication to do the work. But if you just take medication and you don't do the work, that's when you need more and more and more, because that's not the function of it. The function of it is to get you to a certain point where then you can activate the way you talk to yourself and your breathing and your exercise and your sleep and your diet and all those other kind of things that are going to help you.
There's a reason why it is the number one mental illness issue in America. And, that is because, we have it hardwired in us. And so we all can have that kind of an anxiety response to our environment and stressors. We just don't really know the best way to deal with it. We all have not evolved to a point of dealing with, the fast-paced world that we have now. Our brain has not evolved to match the media and the fast-paced stimuli that we receive. And so that's why we're playing catch up all the time. And we've talked about slowing down. We've talked about really just kind of taking a step back, maybe turning off media, turning off everything that you're being bombarded with, so that you can really start to connect within. And that's really where it starts, is understanding about your own stress response.
Yeah.
Right?
A really interesting way to understand that is music. If you walk into a room and there's classical music playing, that's going to impact your nervous system very differently than a pop song or a heavy metal song or jazz or something else. Everything is going to evoke a different emotion within us that is going to change us. And so that's an important thing to know about yourself. There's some people that absolutely feel much calmer with the heavy thrashing music. And some people feel very anxiety produced when there's classical music.
Mm-hmm.
It just sort of depends. I always think about anxiety like having a passenger in your car. Are they sitting next to you telling you how to drive? Are they in the back seat? Are they in the trunk? Are they driving? They're not going away.
Are they sitting on top of the roof?
Right. And so you get to choose how much you're going to let that impact what you do in your life. And actually, the more behaviors you choose that reinforce your anxiety, the stronger your anxiety becomes. And the more you combat those things, the more you push through the anxiety and do behaviors that you're anxious about, the more of the edge that's going to come off.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Ange, you've had some personal experience with, kind of battling anxiety. Wonder if you wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that. We can have a discussion about that.
I would love to. Now, what I would really love is if we're able to get both of us on the screen at the same time. Who knows? That might work. But if not, then it'll be speaker view. I see both of us, so
okay,
hopefully.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So, yes. So you said battle with anxiety. Yes, I would say part of my credibility as an anxiety coach is that I've had my own experiences with it, and I feel much better with how I've managed it. One thing that I would love to talk about is this sort of experiment I did, and it was called 30 Days of Crushing It. I did this back a few years ago, like in 2018. And exactly what you two were saying about how we have the tendency to avoid things that we're afraid of, right? That we think will be bad, whatever that means. And I was saying, I do a lot of avoiding, but I also have a lot of goals for myself. So why don't I make a rule for myself? And that rule was going to be that for 30 days, I would do something that made me anxious every day. Now, do you think that was easy or hard?
I think pretty difficult.
That's interesting. I'm going to go with if you got structured and disciplined and focused, that the vague anxiety would be less, but the immediate, chronic, intense anxiety would be more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So I would say it was a mix. Yeah. So the first step is, are there going to be 30 days worth of things that make me anxious? And the answer is yes. Especially if you are an anxious person, again, whatever that means, because we all have different levels of anxiety or stress in our life. So if you have some kind of anxiety in your life right now, I would guess that you could wake up tomorrow and choose to do at least one thing that you were nervous about, right? One thing that you could avoid, but that was the rule. I was not supposed to avoid something. I was going to do it. And what I like to say when I talk about the 30 days of crushing it is I did not let my anxiety or fear stop me. The rule was I'm going to wait to see how I feel until afterwards. right? After that activity, that was the rule. People who are successful in academics, they're quite good at following rules, right? Jean, would you say people in the military tend to be good at following rules?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that discipline. You can't let your emotions dictate, and you just have to do what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah.
So yeah, so I would say, you can always, for me, it was helpful to frame it as a rule for myself, right?
Yeah.
That's because my husband and you two, no one else was keeping me accountable. Like no one else was saying, Ange, for 30 days, you better do something that makes you anxious, right? So it was for myself. So would you like to know some of the things I did during that 30 days?
Well, before you go to that, and I just want to say that's a really great way of setting it up because you allowed yourself to be able to experience the anxiety, but you just told yourself when you would be able to do that. So it's kind of like, having anxiety be the passenger, but you're saying, but I'm going to drive. Okay. And so that's
Yeah.
really great way to frame it and be in control, throughout the whole process.
Did you let anyone know that you were doing this when you were doing it?
I would say I at least let my husband know. I lived with him and, I like to share things about my day with him. So I told him. I don't know if I told anyone else.
You didn't
Did
tell
you
us.
two know?
No.
No.
Every now and then you would say that, oh, I just did this thing, but we didn't know you were doing this 30-day thing or anything like that.
Ah.
And I still don't know all the things that you did. Like, so I'm learning today too. So what are some of the highlights?
Okay, so well, I'll start with what I remember because I don't remember the full 30 days, but I don't know if I'd call them highlights. But I remember on my first day, because we tend to remember the first and last of things. On my first day, I posted a picture on Facebook. Now, I still say that with some kind of nerves, right? Some kind of sensation in my body because a lot of people listening to this are wondering, what the heck? You can't post something on social media? Of course, I've been nervous about their judgments, right? But that's what I did. I feel like there are other people out there that would agree. It's a little nerve-wracking to post a selfie on social media. It's something that at least I've heard you say, Jean, before is you're not just posting to your whatever your best friends, right? It's like if I shout something and my best friend hears it, but also my in-laws are hearing it and the co-worker that I worked with 5 years ago is hearing it, and all these other people, my cousins and all this, right? So that's so many people that could judge you,
I could
right?
only
And
imagine
that's
if you were like posting live or something on Facebook. That would be so stressful.
right, and talking about it, yeah. So okay, so that's what I did. And then there were other things, some things I had no plans for, right? Again, you wake up in the morning. I live in the city and I had not wanted to ride a bike because the city can be a crowded place. I think it's dangerous enough to be a pedestrian sometimes, right? With all these cars going by. But I've wanted to ride a bike because I find that there's some joy in actually doing that. So that was one of my 30 days. I rented a bike because you can do that in the city and I rode it around. Another thing I did, which was quite difficult, was go out to eat by myself. Again, what do you
A
think?
lot of people have a lot of issues with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you think stops them? Why do they have issues?
Well, I think that it's that self-consciousness, thinking that other people are going to be thinking about them and, feeling sorry for them that they don't have someone to eat with or, all of that.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I would group all that into judgment, right? Thinking you're going to get negative judgment from either people you know or a lot of people you don't know. So one thing I reminded myself of when I went out to eat by myself was no restaurant has a rule that there's only 2 people or more that are allowed to sit down and, and pay for our services and our food, right? So I'm like, that's just a silly thing that I made up in my mind. And I do always love when I see other people dining alone. They seem like confident people to me. They bring something to do. And what was important about dining alone was another rule on that rule was I could not distract myself with my cell phone. It'd be
Love it.
so easy to pull out the smartphone, right? And I think people do this all the time, right? Because we want to avoid, I don't know, looking weird or negative judgments again. So it was a little difficult because I wanted to avoid this situation by going on my phone, but I didn't. So I did
That's an
that.
interesting point, because you said that when you see people dining alone, they seem more confident. But
Mhm.
the thing I hear before someone's done it is people are going to think I'm a loser. Like I have no
Yeah.
friends, and it's actually the opposite what people think. And like, who cares what people think? But that's interesting, that projection that we do.
Yes. And I would say what's similar to that is something I did on another day is working out publicly. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you guys live in the suburbs, right? So you see people working out, running around the block, right? Or running in the forest preserves, or hiking. So in the city, there's tons of that too. So I just have never really been the working out in public, like, going out for a jog or something, for lots of reasons. But one is thinking, people will think poorly of me. Um, and what you wear too, like it could get a little self-conscious, right? Like, oh, I'm supposed to be in workout clothes and there's all these strangers and I'm alone. That's where it turns into more primal fear sometimes, right? Like, should I be a woman out when it's a little dark outside in the city running alone, So with all of those things said, I went out and I started jogging, which I followed my gut when it came to being light outside still and being close to my home and wearing what I felt comfortable in. So that went fine. I would say that went well, right? I say it was similar to the last one because if I see people working out, I don't think about them for longer than a minute afterwards. I don't go home think, oh, what is that person doing? Why were they wearing that? Right. So the same thing. Nobody was thinking about me afterwards.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I think I'm self-conscious doing yoga at the gym, which is where people work out. But like, people kind of do yoga in a yoga class. That's an interesting thing, that the anxiety producing things that we have.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, we can make anything anxiety producing. Now, I understand you did something really extreme, though.
Well, yes. Would you like me to get there? Yeah. But I have to tell you the steps before it. Okay.
Okay.
So, because I would say it's an important thing. So one of my 30 days was I made plans to do something that, Ray calls extreme, right? So that meant my thing for the day was scheduling something, right? So for me, it was online. I had to click a button and, probably pay for it. And I really like to give that some kind of praise or power, because that's the first step towards doing anything new or big, right? You think about like taking a big trip, right? It's not like all of a sudden you're in Italy, right? No, there was planning that went into it. At one point in time, you had to buy a flight, right? One point in time, you had to pick what hotel you were going to stay at. You had to pick maybe attractions you were going to see. You had to save money for that ride or that flight, whatever. So you had to do something before that big trip was accomplished. So similar for this thing, right? That was my first step. I didn't avoid it by not clicking or saying, I don't want to spend the money. This was something I wanted to do for a while. I knew it was going to be like physically anxiety provoking, but I've known other people who've done it. And I was just like, why not? Why haven't I done it yet? So my husband was like, I'm anxious. I don't want you to do it. Which the people pleaser in me, I don't like that he was feeling anything other than good about it, right? But I also explained to him, well, although you don't feel great about it, I do. And I'm not doing this for you, I'm doing it for me. So all of that and the rest of my 30 days went exactly how they were supposed to. I did some days of doing something for my anxiety, like I'm going to rest today and I'm not going to regret it. I'm not going to beat myself up for it, right? I'm going to take a nice hot bath with lavender Epsom salts. So there were a couple other things that were not anxiety provoking, but to better manage general anxiety. On the 30th day, I went skydiving.
Yay!
So that was my thing. So, and it was great as I expected it to be. And my body did not react in a super stressful way like I thought it would.
I would still call that extreme.
Was there any
Okay.
time during the 30 days that you pushed yourself through your anxiety to do a behavior that was anxiety producing that you regretted?
No, because you'd think I'd remember that, right? But no, I don't remember any such thing. I don't regret not doing anything. Yeah.
I like the fact that the way you approached the anxiety was to go internal, right? Is to face it head on within yourself. And too often, what people do with anxiety is they go external. Is that if I feel this way on the inside, then I need to control everything outside of my environment and make that so that I don't feel that anxiety. Right? And so now they're controlling their home, they're controlling their relationship, their spouse, controlling their kids. Then they want to make sure that the work environment fits, their anxiety, so that now they're just, mitigating everything so that they don't have those symptoms.
Which actually makes everything worse, because what you're doing then is hardwiring your brain to believe that if you have control out here, then you're going to be okay. But it's impossible to have control out here.
Yeah,
absolutely impossible.
Right.
You have control over how you respond to what's happening out there. And so what you were talking about, Angie, is awesome, because you did some things that are really important. You were very deliberate. You were conscious. You talk about planning, right? Because anxiety is really, really reactive. And if you react, then you let that get the best of you, and you will not do anything in your life that is meaningful or a little exciting or scary. And it's when we do those new things that we rewire our brain and feel more confident and good in the world. That's why I asked if you felt bad about anything you did, and you're like, no. And it will always give you that. And it's instant, right? Like probably the day you went skydiving, you were probably like super, excited for the rest of the day, just a big high that you're on, and not an anxiety one.
Right. And what I would add to all this talk about the 30 days is a lot of things I mentioned were physical things, right? So that's not just what makes people anxious, right? One of the things that I surprised myself that I did, it was more on the emotional track. There was someone in my life that I have not spoken to in a very long time for many, many reasons. Neither one of us spoke to each other. So one of these days, in those 30 days, I was thinking, oh, I want to contact that person. But I was afraid to call them up. So I messaged them, sort of like a text. Yeah. So however I communicated online with them, I messaged them. And then the next day, I had enough guts to just call them. And then we had a phone conversation, the first one in like 10 years. I mean, if that's not a step towards healing and a step towards forgiving and a step towards letting go of some past, argument or whatever, this was a mutual hurt that neither one of us did it to each other, but because of a mutual hurt, we didn't have any interest in talking to each other, right? But like that, just the step of first thinking about them, reaching out to them one way, it just led me to giving them a call. And I broke the ice on that one. And I would say it's awesome.
Let me ask you this, Angie. If it had not turned out that way, let's say you didn't get a good reaction from the other person,
yeah,
would it still have been worth it?
I see the complication in that question, right? Because I got the better side, the better response. I would like to say it would still be worth it. I wouldn't beat myself up over it, but that's a discussion to have with my brain at that time, to feel the hurt or rejection or anger. Yeah. And still remind myself that I had the good intention and I don't regret it.
See, that's the hard part when we are making a goal, for ourselves and it involves someone else. It's an unpredictable element. We don't know how other people are going to react. Like if you had told a lot of people, hey, I'm going skydiving, I'm sure you would have gotten a plethora of responses from people, and that might have maybe deterred your decision on doing it, right? And so this is the
one person that knew didn't want her to do it.
That's right. The one person who knew didn't want you to do it. And this is the tricky part about facing your anxiety, and that is that you have to do a lot of self-discovery, and you have to really dig deep into what your truth is, right? And what your authenticity is, because if you're not connected with that, then it'd be very easy to be pulled off course by what other people think and what other people's opinions are, whether you should or shouldn't, right? And then I think also it's a lot harder for you to let go of what the reaction is of other people, what the response is. And even if it's not other people, it's very hard for you to let go of the outcome, right? Getting on stage, if you're able to face that fear, you get on stage and, you're like, yay, but you performed horribly. You still have to be able to let go of the outcome of that, right? So that you can move on and really focus in on challenging that anxiety, challenging that fear. And that's really what the goal is. The goal isn't, the outcome.
It reminds me of like a race, and they say, get ready. And you put yourself in this position and get set. And you're like, and then you don't do it. And you just stay in that place of, I'm set. I'm so anxious, Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you just go, it resolves. But if you never go, you go back and, like jumping off a diving board that's really high, instead of jumping, you like crawl back down the ladder.
Yeah. Yes, I see what you're saying. And one thing, let's take one question before we, start meditation and wrap up. But before we take the question, I wanted to add, Ray, what you were saying, like the example of being on stage, or let's say jumping off of the high diving board. I think people who have a certain level of anxiety, they are so worried that they won't survive it. And again, whatever survive to them means, right? So I would like to think that someone with high anxiety, once they come off of that stage, even after a less than perfect performance, they are going to feel much better because it was a confirmation that they were able to survive it. Look, they're not dead, or they're not, I don't know, horribly scarred. I don't know. People are so afraid of things, negative judgment, and they chalk it up to this idea of actual survival.
So
if you can actually do it, you'll remind yourself you'll survive.
I want to add a caveat to that, because I have a real world example here. I use the example of getting on stage for reasons. I actually have a fear of being on stage.
Oh,
I do. I'm not joking. And
that's
it's
surprising.
stems
Yeah.
back from when I was 5 years old. I was part of a violin troupe, and we performed in Orchestra Hall in downtown Chicago. And this, if you don't know Chicago and Orchestra Hall, this is where Chicago Symphony Orchestra performed. So it was a really awesome honor to do this. And I was on stage, I was in the front row of all the other kids, and we were supposed to stand there with our violins ready. And then when we got the signal from our conductor, we would put our violins up in ready position. Well, my parents were out in the audience, and they were waving to me, and so I was waving at them and saying hi, and I missed the cue for putting the violins up in ready position. So everyone was ready with their violins, and I was still waving at my parents like this. The entire orchestra hall erupted in laughter. And I
Oh.
realized that they were laughing at me. Okay.
Oh.
So since
Yeah.
5 years old, I mean, that's, a very young age. And so, this is very important for people to understand is no matter how many times I get up in front of an audience, no matter times I am doing Facebook Live or, right before going to Facebook Live, our camera goes on the fritz and I can't get them to go. So, no matter what happens, right, there is still an anxiety response. So you're always going to have this knee-jerk reaction, to whatever it is that had produced that anxiety response early on. Now you can work at it and you can continue to kind of smooth over the rough edges, but you need to realize that there is always going to be that little bit of a knee-jerk response. And you build some coping mechanisms around it, you force yourself, you get yourself back, in facing that fear over and over again. Okay. But it's never going to totally go away. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's just really important for people to know, because I think people think,
Yeah.
well, I can't do this. I'm not perfect, right? I keep making this mistake over and over and over and over again. And then they give up. And it's not about giving up. It's about learning more and more about yourself each time you face that challenge.
I agree. Okay. Thank you for
Wait,
sharing.
before we go into meditation, we want to talk a little bit about your anxiety
Oh,
group coming up.
let's answer this question super quick.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Quick as we can. Okay. So somebody says, I have a parent who is not stable and did not call me for my birthday. Their birthday is coming up and it's getting me a little nervous. I have a lot of mixed emotions going on and feel heartbroken. What should I do?
That's a great question.
I think birthdays are a great example of feeling that exposure and vulnerability, and we have expectations, and those expectations they come from lots of places, how we were treated as children, all those kind of things. And I remember my 30th birthday, and I was living alone and didn't really have anyone to celebrate with. And I remember thinking, like, do I make my own cake? And that day I decided that I was going to own my birthday. I was going to do what I wanted for myself, take really good care of myself, and that I wasn't really going to celebrate my birthday with anyone else ever again, unless it was something I wanted. And I do that. And sometimes my mom doesn't like it because she wants to see me on my birthday, but I still be selfish on my birthday. People will absolutely let you down, but you know what? Someone else that you don't expect at all is going to acknowledge you in a way that feels really great. And so I think that there's an openness that you can get to where you can sort of forgive those that have let you down, but also really appreciate those who at that moment have stepped into that. But most importantly, meet your own needs.
Yeah. And if you meet your own needs, then anything that is coming towards you from other people is only going to be a bonus. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, when you think about that scorecard, and I think this is, kind of along the lines of that question, is that, this person, I said happy birthday, so they should say happy birthday. And, the scorecard is always going to let you down. right? And all the focus only is going to be on, keeping score, and really not about what it means to you. If you intentionally, from a place of, humbleness, you say happy birthday because you truly mean it, and the person never says happy birthday to you, you can walk away without any regrets. But if you are saying happy birthday, like giving a gift with strings attached, then you are going to be let down. Maybe not that time, but eventually you are going to be let down. And so letting go of the outcome is really important, especially when it comes to other people who we have no control of.
And probably protecting yourself and keeping some distance from people who let you down, and lowering the expectations with those people, and really appreciating and bringing closer to the people who are there for you.
Mm-hmm.
And, those are probably some of the things that you're going to be doing in your Crushing It anxiety group, that you can teach people some of these great skills that you've developed in yourself over the years. Do you want to talk just a little bit about your group?
Yeah, we have time because the meditation will be short anyway. So the Crush Anxiety group, it is called Crush Anxiety, but it is not the same as 30 days of crushing it that I talked about. But I'm going to be using a lot of that idea. So what 30 days of crushing it was basically all about is it was exposure therapy in a way, right? So I'll be bringing all of that knowledge that I have about exposure to this 6-week group. It is a virtual group. We meet for 1 hour for 6 weeks. It starts on February 17th, which is a Wednesday evening. So for the 6 weeks after, we'll be talking about things like, first, the physical symptoms of anxiety. They manifest differently in everybody. There's tons. I'm still learning certain ways that people could be physically impacted by anxiety. And then we're looking at avoidance, which we talked about already a little bit tonight. Why do we avoid things? What is it exactly that you are avoiding, right? And how could you approach that differently? And so physical symptoms, avoidance, and other things just concerning more customized thoughts about your own anxiety. And, there is room in that group for us to do some reflection. Where did my anxiety begin, maybe? That's probably needs a few good sessions to actually figure that out. But this virtual group, we'll do exercises that will get you to start thinking about where your anxiety might have come from and why you're acting in those certain ways as, let's say, an adult.
Great. Wow. Very well needed.
Yes, absolutely. And you can get information for that on the Couple Synergy Community Facebook page or through the Connections program.
Right, right. And so if you're not part of the, community, the Couple Synergy Community group, join that. If you're already on Facebook watching this, you just join the group. That's where we have all the events and also discussions about the events as well. And if you're not on Connections, Connections, that we do this weekly webinar on Connections, and then we just stream it live to Facebook. But, there are a ton of other groups that are also offered on Connections, as well as the recordings of all of these weekly webinars. You can access all of them, which we've been going at this, how many weeks now, Ange? I think 14 or something, maybe?
Yes. Is this our 14th? Yeah, or our 15th.
Maybe 15. I don't know.
So I'm taking a break from leading today so I can just enjoy the meditation, and Angie's going to guide us today.
Okay, so what I want everyone to do right now, because sometimes it can be nice before I ask you to close your eyes, is just take a nice breath in, and on your exhale, go ahead and start to stretch a bit. One way you could do this if you're sitting down like you two is just reach your arms up. Sort of extend your fingertips, give them a little squeeze, and let your arms come back to your side. And when you're ready, take a breath, and on your exhale, let your eyelids close. As your eyes are shut, Let any sounds around you just go in one ear and out the other. And as you're sitting here, notice your breath, whether it's quick or slow, whether it's shallow or deep. Just remind yourself that your body is breathing exactly as it needs to in this moment. Allow your shoulders to be rested, your spine to be relatively straight, and your head in a position that it would be in as if you were looking off toward the horizon. And when you're comfortable, allow your body to sink a little deeper into your chair, grounding for the moment, breathing a little deeper, and letting any tension in your body release on your exhale. And in your mind's eye, as you're feeling calm in the moment, breathing as you need to, allow yourself to imagine a beautiful scene as you're outside of a very old castle. Notice the colors around you, the colors of the sky, of the trees, the stone, and how the castle you're standing in front of is so massively tall. So tall, the clouds are surrounding the top. As you're feeling grounded and as you're feeling adventurous, remembering you are safe in this moment, breathing as you need to, walk up to the side of the castle and notice you come across a very large old ladder. Put your hands on the ladder and look up. It's so extremely long, you can't see the edge of it. You can't see the top of the castle you're in front of. But go ahead and start climbing. With your breath, go ahead and take each step nice and steady, nice and slow, putting your hands on each rung, grasping, moving up, breathing as you need to before you stop and look down. You're quite high, the trees around look different, and the sky has started to change with clouds moving among it. The colors of the sky slightly different as before because time moves so quickly. At the moment, allow any anxiety you have in your life to wash over you, letting it move from the palms of your hand on the rungs of the ladder, through your forearms, shoulders, your lungs, your lower back, snaking down your thighs, and finally to the tips of your toes and the arch of each foot. And just hold it for a moment, remembering that with time, everything changes, including any physical sensations, any stress, any worry, any trauma. And begin to move up the ladder again, breathing a little deeper. With each exhale now, consciously release that tension from the palms of your hands and let it release from the arch in each foot, imagining you're pulling yourself up that ladder, pushing up with each step, breathing as you need to, feeling stronger until you reach the top and all you see is white with clouds around you, not being able to see the bottom. As you're at the tip of the ladder, climb over at the top of the castle and stand tall. Allow your arms to be stretched up towards the sky and enjoy your breath. With all the energy in your body, notice how it feels. Whether you can feel your heart beating or not, your heart is beating because you are alive. And in this moment, you are safe. And in this moment, your body is breathing and working exactly as it needs to. Feel the victory at the top of this castle and notice again how the sky has changed. Take what you need from the top of this castle, whether it's courage, strength, confidence, or something else. Breathe a little deeper, absorbing that energy, reminding yourself you can revisit this place of energy, this place of safety, and this place of strength at any time. On your next breath in, allow everything around you to disappear, coming right back with your eyes still closed to the spot you're in, feeling pulled towards the ground. Go ahead and put a hand over your heart and just notice if you can feel your heart beating. With your hand, press gently into your chest, breathing a little deeper. And when you're feeling centered and calm, start to stretch your legs and arms, wiggle your toes. And when you're feeling strong and confident, gently open your eyes. Well, thank you for joining me during that meditation.
Thanks
was
for leading
lovely.
that meditation, Angie.
Very cool.
Ooh.
Welcome. That was fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us today on Couple Synergy, and be sure to, send us any questions or topic suggestions too. You guys can, either send it through our Facebook page, Couple Synergy, or email us at contact@couplesynergy.com.
Until next time.
Until next time, synergize your life and synergize your love.
Bye.